Violence and Conflict in Colombia, narrated by Garrett Stein. This piece depicts a cob of corn using human molars to replace kernels. The artist describes it as 300 teeth telling 300 individual stories. The teeth allude to the violence that is commonplace in Colombia, which is what we will be discussing throughout this video. Another Colombian work is Noviembre 6 y 7. Chairs were hung to represent the empty seats left as a result of the Palace of Justice siege in Bogota, Colombia, 1985. The common theme between these works is the normalization of violence in Colombia. This is seen through the disinterest in chairs and the symbolism of teeth as kernels of corn, something that is commonplace in Colombia. This disinterest is significant to how conflicts endure because when violence is commonplace for an extended period of time, citizens become complacent with it and don't know how to fix it. It has become part of their lives. To compare and contrast these works with our class's reading, La Virgen de los Sicarios, or the English title Our Lady of the Assassins, here is a passage. It was obvious he was dead. But who killed him? What do you mean, who, Senora? Why, the men on the motorbike. Didn't you see them? In the meantime, some kids were telling each other to hurry up. Run, run, come see the dummy. This novel takes place in Colombia and follows an assassin. Typically, in an ideal world, children are not eager to see dead bodies or horrific images. In addition, perhaps the woman our protagonist is talking to would have more of a horrified reaction, or to call law enforcement. But with the state of the police in Colombia and the social climate in general, this is the reactions that are more likely common. The piece on the left is titled Capilla Blanca by the same artist who created Cosecha. Next to it is a better view of inside the van. This piece begs many questions. Why put a chapel inside of a police van? Why put that van inside of another church? Perhaps if you're a U.S. citizen, is this a piece about the separation of church and state, or the lack thereof? The artist, unlike many, invites a viewer to sit inside of the van. When inside, a song is playing that was recorded on the device that you see to the right. A music box made out of knives confiscated by the Bogota police. The machines reproduce traditional religious melodies. Questions you may ask yourself when looking at this piece focus on the obvious symbolism that this work invokes. But what is that symbolism actually alluding to? When you get into a police van, even if you aren't religious, perhaps you start praying for good fortune. Upon reading the artist's description, this work is part of an exhibition called Accidental Beauty. The website describes it as, quote, "The series consists of works that were born from the functional and symbolic retextualization of objects found in the area, and seeks to synthesize formerly neglected anthropological, aesthetic, and historical aspects." Juan Manuel Echevarria is responsible for the following two works. Bocas de Ceniza, Mouths of Ash, is a series of videos of victims, survivors, or those who were directly impacted by paramilitary guerrilla warfare. Each survivor writes and sings a song to help them recover and heal after the events of the violence that plagues the Colombian countryside. Many victims have lost everything, and through this work are reclaiming their identities as Colombian citizens. Although some videos are from 2003, the Juan Manuel Echevarria reminds people viewing his work that these conflicts and atrocities are still very current issues for the citizens of Colombia. This indicates that the same problems from 2003 have persisted all the way to 2019. Some problems in Colombia have not changed in almost 17 years. Since this comprehensive work began, in addition, the conflicts didn't start when Echevarria made his first work. They were still very prevalent before then. So why is this? The namesake of the song comes from the day the Magdalena River was discovered, Ash Wednesday. This segues us into the next work, Requiem NN. NN stands for no names. During the paramilitary violence, bodies had been pulled from the river. The identities of these people were unknown. However, those in a small town in Colombia called Puerto Perillo, which laid at the center of the conflict, it is believed that adopting these nameless victims and giving them a family in the afterlife, their spirits will grant them favors. People purchase burial grounds and create shrines to those pulled from the river, often baptizing them or giving them new names. These acts can be interpreted in many ways. Is it selfish to bury someone else so maybe their spirit will serve a good purpose to them? Is it noble to honor the victims regardless of the potential reward? Do these spirits truly lay in purgatory, and can they actually bring good luck to those honoring them? Artist and filmmaker reveals more details in his film Requiem NN. Colombia is riddled with crime. From guerrilla forces to the drug epidemic, it all culminates on one huge issue: FARC. FARC stands for Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia. FARC has been around since 1964 and continues to be one side of the same coin in Colombia. FARC is a revolutionary force, and the rebel group, originally founded by farmers and workers, sought to challenge the inequality they were victims to in Colombia in 1964. The rebel group's goal is to, quote, to represent Colombia's poor by seizing power through armed revolution and establish government. The group is Marxist-Leninist in that it seeks to redistribute wealth among the country's population. Which brings us back to the question, why is this conflict taking so long to resolve? This conflict is somewhat responsible for most of the violence in Colombia, and if the government wanted to snuff it out, they might have struck a democratic deal with rebels decades ago. In the past 3 years, the Colombian government has made such a deal with the rebels. In 2016, peace accords were signed by then-President Juan Manuel Santos, which would end the 50 years of violence that preceded. A New York Times reporter visited a rebel camp and reveals that the accords were short-lived, as some guerrillas did not agree, abandoning the peace deal. In addition, the government had promised clean water and education to the rebel territories. However, the next president, Ivan Duque, campaigned against the accords and demanded revisions. The peace deals were described as being corrupt. A FARC peace negotiator, Jesus Santric, was arrested for trafficking 10 tons of cocaine this year while preparing to take a seat in Senate. These conflicts endure for the same reason all conflicts endure. You have a select group of individuals who are trying to come to a conclusion, and other individuals who are furthering their own agenda. FARC is guilty of it, the Colombian government is guilty of it, and even the United States is guilty of it when they are picking sides. Conflicts endure because people are furthering their personal interests, especially when doing so contradicts paths that will eventually and hopefully lead to peace. When does it end? In 2022, Duque is up for re-election, and his contesters, or contester, is unknown. The previous president is ineligible for re-election due to serving 2 4-year terms already. Perhaps Duque's revisions will prove useful. Maybe FARC will dig their heels in and continue to fight for their beliefs until a deal is reasonable to them. Maybe in 2022, Duque loses the Colombian election and his successors will find a solution. Only time will tell.